Well, Patrick, I think if we all had a dollop every time we mention your name, we'd be a wealthy man. But are you glad the whole saga that it's become is now over and you can move on? Because just give us some insight into your take on it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the last 3 weeks it's intensified quite a bit. And it's just good to have it out of the way, and I suppose now we can focus more on team rather than, I suppose, individuals. But certainly glad to have it out of the way and can just focus on playing footy now.
At times, though, did you watch and hear some of the stuff being said and smile to yourself? I mean, what do you think? Was it a bit funny or?
To be honest, as players, you don't really look too much into what's written. If you did, then you get down quite a bit. You certainly don't take your ups from the media, because there'll be just as many downs. So I didn't read too much into it.
Did you ever seriously think about leaving?
What's that?
Did you ever seriously think about leaving?
It certainly comes into your calculations, and I think that's the case with every player. But certainly with the group that we've got, with the coaching staff that we have in place, the support from members and administration, there's plenty of reasons to stay, and that's why I'm stoked to be staying.
How did you weigh up the issues of non-football, like family, location, all that?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because obviously I've been away from mum and dad for a while, and they miss me a fair bit. But I think the longer that you stay within an environment, you build some really good relationships, and that's something that I've certainly done whilst being here. So it certainly comes back to family and being away from family, but you weigh that up with what you've created here and the life that I've created here as well.
What was the hardest thing, deciding yes or saying to them, no, I'm not?
Just being away from family, I think, Michelangelo. I think that's the biggest factor, and I think that's the case with most interstate players. Being away from family for long periods of time.
How did you break the news to them, or were they pretty well expecting you to stay?
I think they've known for a while. Yeah, so I don't think. I think mum and dad have known for a while, so it's no great shock to them.
Do you intend to be a one-club player now then?
Well, I've signed for 3 years, so at the end of those years, we'll weigh that up. But really happy with the environment that's being created here at the moment, and loving being a part of the club, and that's why I've obviously looked to stay.
Patrick, you pitched out that you wanted to do it end of year rather than early. What changed that?
It's probably a stock standard answer that you give to try and get the media off your back, to be honest. At the start of the year, that was probably where I was leaning, but I suppose given the situation that we're in as a club, and the speculation that it creates, and I suppose the hype that it generates, eventually it's become a negative on the group, and to get it out of the way, and for the club just to be able to focus on winning games of footy rather than fielding questions about players' contracts, I think that's a better thing for the club.
Sorry, did they give you the chequebook to fill out, or was it the other way around?
No, they didn't.
In terms of all the offers that were either given to you or very much on the way, how did you factor those in?
I never myself spoke to other clubs. I suppose I didn't really weigh up other clubs. I more weighed up, whether you go home to be closer to mum and dad. But I think with like I said before, the environment that we've created here, there's no reason to leave. And I think that'll be the case with other players that re-sign, and especially for me, because it's not like I'm living in Melbourne. If I went to live back home, I'm 3.5 hours away from Melbourne. So to move back into home would be further away from Melbourne than I am here in Adelaide. So true, but I mean, it's a good point, because Geelong would be the closest. But I think with the list that we have at the moment and the direction that we're heading, I'm very comfortable to be staying with the club.
Is too much made of the sort of family go-home factor? I mean, plenty of people in plenty of professions live and work away from home. It's just part of life.
Yeah, I reckon maybe a little bit. It certainly depends on each person's situation. Some people are closer to their families than others. I'm certainly very close to my family, but it's sort of the old, you build a family over here almost with the camaraderie that we have. And I mean, I've come through at a time when we had a huge changeover in players. When I first started at the club, we had a lot of players over the age of 25, 26, And you look at our list now, and the majority of players are under the age of 21. So I've been fortunate enough to come through with a group of players that's been able to keep our core together. Obviously, we've had Phil leave at the end of last year, and there's obviously delistings after every season. But the majority of players that I've come through the system with have stayed together, and those are the really strong bonds that you build over time, and that's how you win premierships. If you keep your core team together and that core age group together, that's how you build winning teams.
Patrick, some families lean very heavily on players. We watched here, Josh Carter was heavily pushed to go back to Perth. Brad Eden clearly had a strong family link to come back. But how does your family allow you to go on with your footy with or without that issue?
Yeah, Mum certainly would have loved me to come home. There's no doubt about that, but it's always been my decision, and they've always understood that, and they're not pushy at all in terms of, we want you to come back. They would have loved me to come back, but at the same time, they love me playing over here as well, and they love what they love what the club's given to me and how supportive they've been, and they completely understand that as well.
You're a stunning start, and the club's stunning start. Is that the reason that you've stayed? If that didn't happen, would it maybe not sitting here yet?
It certainly makes it a lot easier, but I suppose one swallow doesn't make a summer, they say, and I think regardless of whether we were going poor or well, I still think the infrastructure is strong enough that we're going to be a very successful team in the near future. So it's great that we have started so well, but that certainly wasn't the only determining factor in me re-signing.
What did it do to your market value?
What's that?
What did it do to your market value?
Well, that's what you guys are for, aren't you? That's what you've been doing. I'm not going to go into details about my contract, but I'm very happy.
Do you hope others follow? I mean, you've mentioned how important it is to beat the group, and Tipper, Sloan and those fellas. Do you hope that they put pen to paper soon too? Yeah, well, Tippo informed me before that he's after either 9 or 10 years, so if you speak to Nobes, if he can get that sorted, then Tippo's, I think, he's willing to sign tomorrow, he said. So, I'm sure those will happen in time, and ultimately it's up to them to make those decisions, but I think as a club we're confident they'll stay.
Patrick, what did you think about term? The notions that there'd been those 5-year contracts pushing around. Why did you decide 3, or was that the only offer put to you 3 rather than 5 or longer?
It's a long time, 5 years. A lot can change in that time. You can become a better player, you can become a worse player, but I just felt that 3 years was a good time length for myself. Obviously, in other people's situations, Tippo's happy with 10, which will take him out at 35. So if he can get that, I'm sure he'll be happy. Maybe he can challenge Brad Johnson, I don't know.
Was there ever one definitive sales pitch from Sando or the other coaches, or did they sort of leave you alone to make a decision?
No, Sando's always been, I suppose, of the thought that the players can make their decisions. He's created the environment for us to play in and to enjoy our footy, but no, he's never been over the top or anything like that at all.
Why have you been so good this year, Pat? What's the main change?
So
why have you been so good this year? I mean, it's really a huge breakout. I think everyone thought you had the potential to do it, but it seems like it's a flick of a switch. What do you think has happened?
I think it's a greater consistency, and I think the same can be said for us as a team with our performance. We're more consistent over quarters. We're having a greater number of contributors during games. We're not just getting 5 or 6 players having really good games. 5 or 6 having good games throughout games. We're having 10, 15 players play really good games week in, week out, and that's the key to any successful side. And that's, I think, players have been successful, but also the club itself.
Just on that incident with Mark Murphy last week, and a number of other incidents, I suppose. Everyone's saying you may be thinking a bit more about your footy now. Maybe in a few 2-3 years ago, you would have maybe gone in head first a bit more with the Mark Murphy scenario. But is it just maturity, or is it genuine off-field schooling and thinking about it a bit more?
I think it's thinking about it a bit more. Yeah, certainly we've got, that's what our assistant coaches for, to go through your tapes and, to go through with you, I suppose, better techniques, to go through different stoppages or different scenarios. And I think you're right. A couple of years ago I would have gone in head first and possibly been in hospital, but the longer you play the game, the smarter you get, I suppose, and you know when to turn your body and when sometimes you've got to go and when sometimes you don't need to go because we've got other players around the contest.
Right, it's the last one. So
it was a big lesson on the weekend. about the way you might have to change around your team system, the way Collingwood dealt with it?
I don't think so. No, I think certainly every week's different. We came up against a very good side in Collingwood, and we'll come up against a team that weren't happy with their performance on the weekend in Fremantle. So I don't think we're not going to be jumping at shadows, but we've got a few things that we need to address. But we've had a really good start to the season, but you can't rest on that. There's the second half of the season to go, and we have to take every game as it comes. You can't think too far ahead, because if you do, you start losing games of footy.
When you talk about so many more being around that, the contest to help in that midfield, for them, for so many not to have won their positions means there's something they learn from it. What's your gut feel there?
I think we really fumbled around the footy a lot. I think Collingwood were really clean, and I suppose they were a bit more one take than us. We fumbled the ball, which I suppose drew a few more players into the contest, whereas they were able to, I suppose, keep their depth around stoppages and able to flick it out and then create deeper entries where we sort of hacked it forward rather than had any, I suppose, method around the way that we entered the ball inside 50.
So execution,
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All good. Thanks, mate.